One of the practices of the reading of Psalms, you will see the word Selah there. It is, in fact, an invitation to sit quiet for a moment and let the words wash over us. So when we get to that place, I will stop reading and we will allow for a quiet moment. The word about life comes from Psalm 82. God has taken God's place in the divine council. In the midst of the gods, God holds judgment. How long will you judge unjustly and show partiality to the wicked? Selah. As life has unfolded, and so the question comes to God. It is waving a finger in God's face. How long will you judge unjustly and show partiality to the wicked, as it seems that the unjust and the wicked seem to have their way? But then comes an answer to the question. Give justice to the weak and the orphan. Maintain the right of the lowly and the destitute. This is God speaking to us as instruments of justice. Rescue the weak and the needy. Deliver them from the hand of the wicked. They have neither knowledge nor understanding. They walk around in darkness, talking about leadership. All the foundations of the earth are shaken. I say, you are God's children of the Most High, all of you. Nevertheless, you will die like mortals and fall like any prince, any leader, any political person with power. And so we then turn again to God. Rise up, O God, judge the earth, for all the nations belong to you. Anyone who wants to take issue with the idea that church and politics don't go together, they might need to read this again. God is in the business of justice. God is in the business of justice and inclusion and spirit and faith and hope and love and peace. God is not in the business of church. God is not in the business of church. And at the risk of being accused of hyperbole and labeled an extremist, I believe that we are in a period of history that will define the vision and the character and the soul of our nation. I also believe that congregations, the church, in society, has a role to play in this defining time. I began by declaring that God is in the business of peace, that God is in the business of justice. God is in the business of faith, hope, and love, and not in the business of church. Allow me to speak to just one event of this past week that people of faith and good citizens of conscience must speak to. On August 13, 2019, the acting director of the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, in an interview, revised the iconic poem on the Statue of Liberty's pedestal to suggest that only immigrants who can stand on their own 2 feet are welcome to the United States. Many people hear this as a new idea, as a good idea. They think it has merit. It seems in line with an ethic of personal responsibility, and it seems in line to protect the limited resources of our society. I hear those arguments. I reject those arguments. And instead, I would say that it is an idea that is a demonic lion in a sheep's clothing. I want to say unequivocally that it is nothing new, nor is it a good idea. An 1892 poem by Thomas Bailey Aldrich. The title of the poem is The Unguarded Gates. Understand, this was over 100 years ago. This sentiment, this idea, captured the ethos. And so I want to share it with you. Here it is. Wide open and unguarded stand our gates, and through them presses a wild, motley throng. Men from the Volga and the Tartar steppes, featureless figures of the Hong-Ho, Malayan, Scythian, Teuton, Celt, and Slav, flying the old world's poverty and scorn. These bringing with them unknown gods and rites. Those tiger passions here to stretch their claws. In street and alley, what strange tongues are loud? Accents of menace alien to our air. Voices that once the Tower of Babel knew. O liberty, white goddess, is it well to leave the gates unguarded? On thy breasts fold sorrow's children, soothe the hurts of fate. Lift the downtrodden, but with hand of steel, stay those who to thy sacred portals come to waste the gifts of freedom. Have a care, lest from thy brow the clustered stars be torn and trampled in the dust. For so old the thronging Goth and Vandal trampled Rome. And where the temples of the Caesars stood, the lean wolf unmolested made her lair. Here the xenophobic and racist subtexts, and through them passes a wild, motley throng, an invasion, an infestation. Those bringing with them unknown gods and rites, because we know that Protestant Christian only need apply. In street and alley, what strange tongues are loud? Stop speaking your language and learn English. Voices that once the Tower of Babel knew, as if English is the only godly and unbabble-like language. O liberty, white goddess, and on thy breast fold sorrow's children. Us poor white people are victims. But with hand of steel, let us be selectively compassionate. And lest from thy brow the clustered stars be torn from liberty, Lady Liberty's head, and trampled in the dust. Be afraid, be very afraid, lest we lose our power and our privilege, our blood and our soil. And for so of old the thronging Goth and Vandal trampled Rome, again invasion and infestation fears. Do you hear the xenophobic and racist subtext now? I hope so. 9 years earlier, in 1883, Emma Lazarus had written a sonnet that struck radically different notes. She composed it in order to raise funds for the completion of the Statue of Liberty in New York Harbor. Here's her poem. Not like the brazen giant of Greek fame, with conquering limbs astride from land to land. Here at our sea-washed sunset gates shall stand a mighty woman with a torch, whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name is Mother of Exiles. From her beacon hand glows worldwide welcome. Her mild eyes command the air-bridged harbor that twin cities frame. Keep, ancient lands, your storied pomp, cries she with silent lips. With silent lips she cries, give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send those, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. You see, each poem represents a soul. Each poem represents a vision for a nation. The Aldrich poem comes out of fear of loss and privilege, and a fear that the table of our nation is not big enough or abundant enough. The Lazarus poem comes out of trust in the ingenuity, trust in the generosity of the American people. The Aldrich poem comes out of ignorance of our history and fear of human nature. The Lazarus poem comes out of knowledge of our history, which teaches us that while it is painful, mostly for the new immigrants, we have the capacity to adapt, adopt, grow, and we are better for their presence. The Lazarus poem is rooted in truth that when human beings are pushed, encouraged, and allowed by political structures, the better angels of our human nature flourish. You see, this past week, the director wanted to rewrite the poem and overlay values and a vision that comes out of fear and prejudice. We are at a point where our churches cannot be silent, where we are in fact deciding what is our capacity as human beings and our capacity as a nation. And what vision do we have? And what really is the character of our soul? This is where we are now as a nation. We see terrible things happening through the news. We see the separation of children from parents. We fear undocumented people are burdening the social welfare system. And yet ICE, where does ICE find them? In the workplace. We see a young black man gunned down because they have a BB gun. But a white man with a rifle and maximum magazine of ammunition gets taken alive. We see a black man choked to death for selling cigarettes. But a young white man who killed 9 innocent church members is treated to Burger King on the way to jail. When people are dying, starving, beaten, and denied life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which is the core of our identity and who we are as a people, when they are denied such things, and they are denied so that others who feel like a victim can hold on to that which they're not even losing anyway, I am not slipping into hyperbole. I am not slipping into heresy. I am being faithful to the good news of God. For God is not in the business of church. God is in the business of justice and will judge the nations. Amen.